Hello, Buffer Timers! Welcome to the show where a group of Trek nerds talk about Star Trek every Saturday. And today, it's a new Picard review of the episode Disengage. Before we get into this week's topic, we'll go around clockwise and introduce ourselves, and since we forgot to rank last week's episode, we'll include our ranking out of 10. I'm Dustin from Best of Trek, Worst of Trek, and I'll give last week's episode a 7.5.
Hey, what's up, my know-it-alls? I'm Mr. Know-it-all. I got a YouTube channel, and of course, I love to talk about all this wonderful stuff with you guys. My rank for last week's episode was an 8.5 out of 10.
My name is Dell. My screen name is a joke on Mr. Know-it-all, so he can, be Mr. Know-it-all, and I can be Dell Remembers It Some. So I would rate last week's episode like a 6 out of 10.
Hello, everyone. Robbie Sherman here, musician, podcaster, lover of jazz, owner of Riker's Record Collection. I have my own podcast called Conversations with Robbie Sherman. We got a couple more shows coming up. The Twisted Tales of Felix the Cat subcast, and we're going to be covering the whole Freakazoid run as well.
Rock on.
That's awesome. I used to love that show.
Oh, my ranking for last week's episode was a 7. And what were you going to say, Mr. KIA?
Oh, just I love that show.
Freakazoid is so great.
Dude, it was
of all the Steven Spielberg
criminally
stuff.
underrated. Criminally underrated.
You can join me on the show sometime if you like, Mr. KIA.
That's awesome.
My name is Scott. I'm host of the YouTube channel Opinions No One Cares About. And as for last week's episode, I would probably say a solid 7.
Nice.
Hey everybody, I'm Eve. I'm now with the USS Lilith and also with Starfleet Canada. Huge fan of Section 31, Dell. And I'm not going to say who, but it looks like I might be interviewing one of the composers working on the current Star Treks this week.
Yay.
Neat!
Wow!
Rock on!
That's awesome.
Nice. So, as far as today's episode,
Oh, I
how
forgot
do you
to
feel?
I forgot to give my
Oh,
rank.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dee.
I just remembered. I gave last week's 8.
All right. So between 6s and 8.5s. For this week's episode, how do we feel about the depiction of Sneed the Ferengi?
So I was actually really happy just to have a Ferengi actually in this really established, because we've seen them in passing in Discovery and whatnot, but we haven't actually been back old school in a minute. And so seeing him, I liked the guy. I liked the makeup. I thought it looked really good. It didn't look crazy or rubbery or anything. It looked very, very much like it was like it should. I liked it. I was excited for it.
I have to admit, to me, this is what I think the Ferengi were supposed to be when they were first introduced. I recall hearing that they were supposed to be the new big bad, but people thought they were too ridiculous with their huge ears and lightning whips and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas seeing Sneed, pulling up the head of the guy and everything, that's totally not something you expect from a Ferengi. They're not typically that kind. So seeing him, seeing like a Ferengi who's also willing to, get his hands dirty with something other than Latinum was, I don't know. I think they actually got the Ferengi, they've added another layer to the Ferengi. They're not just comic relief anymore.
I'll go with that.
For
Yeah,
sure.
it's a little more ruthless, which you kind of expect with a species so profit-minded. And what was I going to say? Oh, yeah, I was going to say he seems to fit in really well here on Blade Runner Planet.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny
Dude,
that
I'm not about the only one.
It's funny
Yeah.
Mr. Paul mentioned the makeup, because I know there's a few Deep Space Nine episodes where if you watch really carefully and somebody will hit Quark or one of the other Ferengi, you can see the hand go in because it's like a rubber head.
I thought it was interesting the name Sneed being a complete ripoff from Dr. Seuss. And so it took me a minute to take it completely seriously. But then, as the scene progressed, I was like, okay, this is not a funny scene. That's cool. I love the Ferengi. Anything that gives the Ferengi more depth and more meaning and differences among them is good for me. So I loved Sneed.
When he pulled out the head, it actually really took me aback because I don't expect that level of just intense graphic violence from Star Trek so suddenly. And that was a real highlight of the episode for me. And I also like his fascination with Earth antiques.
Oh, right.
Everything becomes vintage.
I saw that and I was like, if that's Cisco's
baby.
baseball, I'm going to be so upset.
It's funny you mentioned the violence, Robbie, because I mean, we all saw Leland's brains explode on Discovery. So, I mean,
Star Trek all that. So,
well, and before that, we had the meat explosion of in Conspiracy in TNG.
right.
But a severed head, it's almost worse with the severed head because that was played for clear sci-fi cheese. That severed head, like, oh my god!
Right?
So in that moment,
and then Sneed losing his head.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, in that moment, I wrote this down. Sneed said, Tuluka went underground. Get it? He went underground.
It's funny, too, the drug scene, like him getting Raffi to take drugs to prove that she's, like, not Starfleet, like, not, on the side of the good guys. Because I've been watching another show, Manifest, and there's a scene where the one cop has to... she's trying to bust these drug guys, and they try to force her to take drugs to prove that she's not an undercover cop. And I was like, I watched that episode right before, and I'm like, okay, that's just trippy that this same scenes come out twice now.
It's a very common trope in cop shows.
It is.
Especially when a cop is undercover, the idea that, like, if you do drugs, then you can prove that you're not a cop.
Yeah.
We could call this arc Picard, Life on the Streets.
Yes.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Picard, Hobo Edition.
No, I really liked Sneed. I dare say I actually think as a written villain, Sneed is a more realistic villain than Amanda Plummer's character in this. And we'll get to that down the road here. But I really liked some of the callbacks that were going on there. You guys were saying that he seemed like more like a original classic Ferengi, and he's even wearing a pelt similar to what we first see in Armin Shimmerman's first appearance as the Ferengi. It's more like that, and I really liked the Sluggo Cola and a Coca-Cola bottle. Neat stuff.
Yeah.
As far as how that ties into...
know what Sluggo Cola is?
I don't. I've heard it, but I don't know what it is.
Oh,
it's the slimiest cola in the galaxy.
It's the slimiest cola in the galaxy.
What is
Slurm?
Okay, I was gonna say, so it's like Slurm.
I have a question for Eve.
I dread it, but yeah.
Okay.
I have a question for
R.I.P.
Eve.
Slimes.
The Ferengi know about Section 31 now? I thought this was supposed to be a big-ass secret.
That's what I'm wondering, because Section 31 isn't part of Picard, isn't part of Picard's story arc. I mean, we never saw them in Next Generation. So I'm kind of wondering, why is Section 31 now, I guess, somewhat out in the open again?
I know, like, the Ferengi just brings it up like it's no big deal. Like, he doesn't look around, like, to pretend he's talking about something top secret. Like, he just brings it up very casually.
Yeah, I'm not sure that part got my attention, because I'm like, wait a second, that's not part of this crew's story arc. Like, that doesn't, it would be like, all of a sudden having Section 31 with the Voyager crew. It just doesn't make sense. So I'm kind of wondering if, well, this would be after Deep Space Nine, and we all know Quark had his fingers in everything. So it's possible Quark heard about the Section 31 visits to the station. And knowledge like that would be profitable to have.
That's true.
So
it was just like they had treated it like it was such a big secret in Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
Like, it's like 1 minute it's there and 1 minute it's not, because it's out in the open in Discovery, and then it's underground by Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, it seems like it has had more and less transparency over time.
Yep.
Yeah.
That'd be my guess.
That's why they created Section 32. Had to start over on another number.
They're the good guys that always do the right thing for the right reasons.
It should be Section 42. The answer to life, the universe, and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Section 47, really. I mean, if we're going to nitpick
Yeah,
over
exactly.
numbers in Star Trek. Going from Sneed's scene, though, is it fair for Raffi's ex to make her choose between lives at stake and her kid?
Okay, so here's the thing. On its face, everybody might want to say no. However, comma, you also have to realize every family and every situation is they're the only stars in their story. He only knows about his son's experience with her history, even that moment when he looks at her and is like, when he just tells because she's getting ready to talk that fevered pitch crazy talk where she's like, we got to do this thing. I'm the only one that can help. And he's like, And it's got that look like somebody who's been with an addict before, where you're like, you're about that nonsense again, aren't you? And it's so I feel like in his universe, he's absolutely justified, and I can understand it from a storytelling standpoint. And a fan of the series, I'm like, no, give her what she needs. But at the same time, it's like, no, I feel him I feel where he's coming from. So that's where I try to look at it circumspectly. But yeah, I got you.
I was really weirded out. Was it established that her ex was a club owner? Because it seems like a weird vocation for the partner of an ex-addict to choose. So either he had the club while he was with Raffi, or he had it after, and that just seems very weird to me, especially if he's an ex-addict. Like, he's surrounding himself with the stuff that he's trying to avoid. Now, granted, some ex-addicts can do that, and they can do it successfully, but it just felt weird to me.
Right.
Sure.
It could be a thing, too, that's the only thing he knows how to do, and this whole surrounding himself with it could be that, and his club is obviously successful. It could be the thing of he follows the rule that a lot of drug dealers do. You don't try your own stash. But as far as like him making her choose, I have to agree with Mr. Know-It-All. Like, yeah, families are the stars of their own story. The other thing is, I think too, he wanted to punish her a little bit. He's angry.
Mm-hmm.
And he's also got his son's anger. So he wants to kind of needle her a little, because I mean, revenge is a very human thing. And for those of us who have spouses, I'm pretty sure we've all had that moment where we're like, oh, I just want to you have an argument and you might accidentally say or do something because you just really want to get back at them. So I think he really just wanted to kind of punish her a little bit, like, stick a fork in her, like.
Stick a fork. Yeah.
I did find that the scene gave me a very Star Trek message that they don't publicize as much as they should, which is that sometimes committing yourself to a larger cause is not as easy as it looks. And so I think some of the reason that choice was there was to prove how far she's willing to go for Starfleet. And the idea that 117 lives is more important than her own. Because I'm going to say that she's an addict and she's thinking selfishly without being judgmental about it. And so I feel like this is one of those times. They did it a little bit in Voyager, but we were really hoping for a lot more. This angst of like, look at everything I've given up and I'm still in Starfleet and I'm still doing my job. And I felt that was really emblematic in this scene.
Is it weirdly convenient, though, that her ex happened to also be on Metalis Prime? Assuming that's where it still worked, because it seemed like it was the same planet.
It seemed like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of. I was actually super like, really, that the universe is that, or the galaxy's that small. Like your first thing is like, I need to go find some underground people. Let me go find my ex. It's like, I don't know. Because personally, I'd have been like, "Oh, dope! Yeah, go talk to my kid. I'm gonna go find another way to get to see Sneed." You know what I mean? Like something. But if the way that they treated it, I was like, "Yeah, whatever."
Yeah.
Raffi does have tunnel vision, though.
Super tunnel vision.
Yeah.
I could see that as a side effect of what she's witnessed, though.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So what did you guys think of Worf swooping in at the last minute to save her?
Come on!
Was it too cliche? Was it awesome.
I don't care. Hey, I loved every bit of it. As a guy who used to own a batleth, I used to have on the wall. It got bent when I moved from up here from Florida, and so yeah, man, I was like, I loved it. I loved it. I love seeing him just kind of be vicious and active and do the thing he's going to do, but very surgical at the same time. Like he wasn't vicious for vicious sake. He was very under control, which is a side of him I don't think you've ever seen. We've always seen when he's fighting, he's like in that like rawr, like getting angry kind of mode. And this felt like a very like I'm coming in, do the things, and I'm out. And then he's like, sorry about that. Come on, let's go. And you're like, oh man, what's going on? Yeah, dude.
Did you guys notice the Klingon battle theme playing?
Mm-hmm.
That was the part that I liked. Because I mean, as soon as the music changed, I'm like, okay, I'm and they start cutting heads off. I'm like, okay, it's going to be Worf. Like,
Yeah.
But it definitely was different because it wasn't Worf doing his usual like bar fight kind of style of fighting.
Yeah,
it was
man.
Worf,
I didn't see any Worf palms.
Yeah.
We hit people. That's right. The Worf palm strike.
It's like the Picard. It's like the Kirk fist.
Totally the
Yes.
Kirk double fist. Yeah, bro.
Yes.
I love it. Oh man. A quick question about music before we get too far off that.
Go ahead.
Did anyone else notice that when the not Romulans, forgive me, but when Vadic shows up and they're showing the ship, they're using that Romulan note. So,
I said that in the chat yesterday. I said that's the Romulan music that they use from Nemesis. That big, those deep, low, like wah. I'm like, that can't be a mistake. Like,
no, it's awesome. Yeah, that's why I thought the ship looked the Shrike looked more like the scimitar.
Yes.
Now, obviously, the scimitar is a little more squared off, but just doing that like forward wing, I'm like the look. It felt very reminiscent when I saw the Titan facing it. I was like, this looks like the Enterprise facing the scimitar. Like it's just the way it was swooping at it. Anyway, whatever.
I'm glad you picked up on the Romulan music there because
the Romulan music was amazing.
I thought that just note that I thought that was a modification on the V'ger sound.
It is. I actually did because I heard the sound and I was like, I know this thing. I know what the instrument looks like because it looks like a giant sheet of metal with frets that are similar to a guitar, and you play it like slide guitar. So I went and looked and said, "Is this the same instrument?" And it was.
Oh, so it's the same. It's very similar. Got it.
Yeah, it's that noise that kind of doesn't sound earthly at all. I don't remember what it's called, but it's this huge sheet of metal that they play like a slide guitar.
It reminds me of the octo bass. If anyone's seen that, they use that.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, the octo bass was literally the largest bass ever created, and it was designed to make a low rumble in the orchestra. And you have to stand on a ladder to play it, and you can actually see the strings move. Like that's what it reminded me of.
Before we move on, I really would like to say that Worf cutting that guy's head off, creating a literal head for a head, was so satisfying to me. That was one of the highlights of this episode.
That's awesome.
Now we know what Ferengi blood looks like too.
Yeah.
I'm behind it.
I hedged on the shot being maybe a little too violent without, like, it didn't build. It was like punch, 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 behead. And so it felt a little weird for something a Klingon would do. It's like, he's not there to kill everybody. He's there to get Raffi. But he kills Sneed sort of almost as a side effect. And the fact that he kills him in such a remarkable way felt weird to me. But I also had struggled a lot with Worf in this scene. Like, it didn't feel like the Worf that I connected with the most. If he's in Section 31, I'm going to lose my head. Because that makes no sense to me.
Can I have it?
You want my head?
Well, if you're going to lose it, you might as well go Where?
I was gonna put it in Picard's collection, like my skull, right next to the Ferengi
Nice.
skull. Yeah.
Next to Gul Dukat or one of the other guys.
Plus,
yeah.
Yes.
Skull Dukat.
Yeah.
Be
Plus,
fair-
everybody saw it coming, though. Like
to
every.
be fair though, he hates Ferengi too. Don't forget.
That's true.
He can look at it while he listens to his gramophone.
Yeah, I'd say the only thing I didn't like about the whole Worf thing was that everybody saw it coming. Every video I listened to, including us, predicted that it was going to be Worf talking to Raffi, and then I saw him, I was like,
Yeah.
okay.
I literally shouted that. I was like, Dustin said that when I was watching the thing.
And I got to give a shout out back to YouTuber Gannon for coming. He was the original one that I saw come up with that.
Okay. Right on.
Yeah.
They shouldn't have put him in that.
Go ahead, Robbie.
They shouldn't have put him in that trailer, because I think as soon as we see Worf in that trailer, we're almost for certain about how he's kind of going to do things. I mean, we know the character so well at this point. I think it would have been better as a surprise to not show him in any advertising, and then when he comes in, oh, there's Worf, and he's maybe acting a little different, but he's also calculating on a certain level. Yeah, That's my main issue with it.
It's interesting that you phrase it like that, though, that we've seen so much of him, but what we just saw is very different. I mean, he's always been like a warrior spirit, but
yeah,
there was a lot more to this, and especially the way he's talking to Raffi when they're just communicating. There's something very cold and calculated, which
That's what I was
Worf
gonna
has been more of a let's beat him over the head with the batleth.
Right. Yeah, he's always been that way.
Yeah, he talks wasn't right when he was talking to Raffi. It's very clipped. It's very abrupt.
But so I watched the episode a second time, and now knowing I actually could hear, with the exception of the fact they have a female computer voice, the way it's being typed, I could hear in his voice. If you just kind of because he speaks in that full cadence, he does not speak in contractions and short speech. So it felt like I'm like, oh yeah, it totally sounds like him typing.
I have a personal pet peeve about using the title of the episode in the episode, and so when he wrote Disengage, I was just like, but other than that, I thought it was a good reveal. I mean, it was a good reveal. I just hope that Worf turns out to not be Section 31. That just seems weird in my head.
I'll be fair, it does actually seem weird to me too, because it's not a very Klingon thing.
No.
Klingons conduct their business in the open. They don't, even Worf has said that many times, like to him, conducting backdoor deals is very Ferengi or Romulan. It's not something Klingons do. They're very out in the open. So that part, I'd have to wonder what the heck put him in Section 31 if he is, because he doesn't.
Yeah.
I tell you what, it'd be a heck of a story development. That's for sure.
See, I could see somebody like Geordi being Section 31, but I couldn't see Worf doing it.
Really? Because I could see Worf before Geordi.
I could see Geordi doing it for reasons, especially because of his brain, his mind.
Go ahead, Robbie. You seem like you're on the delay.
Am I on a delay?
It's okay. Go ahead. We'll wait.
Okay. I'm so sorry. I just wanted to say that I really enjoyed the tense conversation Raffi was having with her computer, where she just kept getting angrier and angrier, and the computer is giving her one-word responses like an ex-lover who doesn't want to talk to her on Facebook or something. I found a lot of humor in it.
Absolutely.
So speaking of ex-lovers, let's move on from Raffi to Seven. Does Seven successfully appealing to Shaw's ego seem realistic, or did he do it to use against them?
So I started saying something like this before we went live. We were talking just before the show started. I really thought in that moment, the moment where she's like, well, you could be the hero who saves heroes and blah, blah, blah. This whole thing, when she's really trying to, I thought to myself, she has not looked more like Seven during Picard than she did right then. Because if you remember from Voyager, after the first season, she got her bearings, she began to be the person who had to think through everybody and talk to them being like, hey, but I thought you always said this thing and blah blah blah. There's a tone, a way a cadence to her stuff, and she jumped right into it. And I was like, this is old Seven. This is Seven from Voyager, bro. This is awesome. I was excited. It was great.
She was quite well to me. I liked it because she was always studying behavior on Voyager. I mean, the Doctor had all his like scenarios for her and everything, and she was very keen to study human behaviors. So to me, I was just, as soon as she started doing that, I'm like, that's exactly the way you appeal to a pompous, blowhard like Shaw. I mean, he's not he can back up what he says, obviously, but he is a bit of a blowhard.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He did kind of have to be talked into doing the right thing, but he did. So he's risen up a little bit in my estimation.
I have a feeling, though, he will hold it over their heads down the road just because that was Shaw.
I just love the fact that when it was finally time for Picard to buckle down and be like, that's it, I'm taking command, we're doing this thing, Shaw was just like, damn it, all right. Like, he pushed until he knew he couldn't push anymore.
Right.
Because he was like, if you guys are not going to be, if you're not hardcore enough, if this isn't legit enough for you to sit here and actually throw your rank around, then I don't believe you. I don't believe you, and you're not going to get me to do this stupid thing.
Yeah. Speaking of rank, though, that one point on the bridge when somebody's like, Captain, like all three of them, like, what?
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah, totally.
Me too. That was a great moment.
Can I, before we move on, I have a very controversial thought about how Shaw and Seven interacted. And it's about when Shaw calls the Rangers anti-establishment pirate types.
Yeah.
To me, not just showing disdain for the group that meant so much to her and that she may still be involved in, according to his mind anyway, it felt an awful lot like being called Antifa.
Huh.
Before we we move on,
I said it was going to be controversial, so I'm not expecting everyone to agree with me. But when I heard it, it felt a little bit like that, like being lumped into a philosophical category because of who you hang out with.
Right.
I could see that.
I have to question why she is his first officer if he's got such a beef with her. Like,
no,
you got your first officer's got to be the person who has your back. Like, they've got to be the person you can trust more than anybody else. And we see that with like Picard and Riker. We see that with Archer and T'Pol eventually. We see that Kirk and Spock, even on Voyager, we see that, although it could have been done better with Chakotay and Janeway, but we really why don't we see that with, like, why would he have a first officer he doesn't respect?
Yeah.
It's bothering me. Yeah. Because, I mean, you would assume they do get a say in who their first officer is. So why does he have a first officer that he really doesn't seem to have any respect for?
That's a really good point. Because, you pick your first officer, and especially where he said he's already come off a 5-year mission on the Titan.
Yeah.
There's no reason that he's not going to be picking his own first officer there. So, yeah, you're right. That's weird. As far as the Fenris Rangers, we had another question here too. Just you can totally throw it in your answer with this. Why they seem like bullies now? But go ahead, Robbie.
I just wanted to mention when we were talking in the chat last night, Eve was very happy that they are not completely sexualizing Jerry Ryan the way they did back in the day. But I was impressed about how fit Jerry Ryan is still at this point. Like, she has kept herself together amazingly, and the new outfits look so good.
Right?
They make her seem very. They make her seem
her
very
and Penny
confident.
Johnson. No time has passed.
Yes, those ladies have aged well.
So they could have cast Jerry Ryan yesterday and been like, "You're going to play this new character," and she's right there ready to jump into a series. She looks amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, no disrespect to Beverly Crusher and to Deanna Troi, but both of them, their appearance was way more jarring for me. Like, I'm a bit face blind to begin with, but I can't recognize Beverly Crusher, for instance. Like, she's nearly unrecognizable to me.
Jerry Ryan aged well. And she looks better. I think she looks better now than she did as in Voyager. I think
might
the
be right.
age has given her more presence and
it's
less
given her
like
agency.
fluff. Yes.
For sure. Like you
And-
can tell when she speaks that she's speaking from a place of surety of herself and
Yeah.
both and
Yes.
but what you said, what you guys were just talking about, when she was doing that whole run and it connected for me that this was old 7, I realized, man, it was sort of validation. She's always been an excellent actor. We just had to can you take her out of the leotard? Once she's not in the leotard and you get to see her act like a normal person in a normal outfit, you sit here and you go, she is so talented, because she really is. She really is. And I love it. I love seeing her be that character and seeing that, oh yeah, the character was always there. Like it was never just the outfit. It was always the whole bit. She was very much, she did a lot with what she had. So
when they first introduced her in Voyager, I was just kind of eye rolling, and I'm like, oh God, here we go again. Something for the 12-year-old boys who can't get a date. And then later on, as she got a few 7-based episodes, like the one where she's all alone while the crew's in the stasis and stuff, when you see those kind of episodes where she's actually having to act, then I was like, okay, this lady can act. Why the heck can't they take her out of the damn suit and stop making her just be, I think Marina Sirtis said it best about Counselor Troy, a potted plant on the on the bridge is how
Jolene Blaylock had a very similar complaint.
Yeah,
that she was the
also
TNA
totally
of Enterprise.
Yeah.
Not wrong.
And on her, like on T'Pol, it did not make sense having a Vulcan walk around in a cat suit. I'm sorry, but that would not be logical. Vulcans don't really put that much effort into their appearance that they would want to, be showing off their cans and their butt.
Well, but to be fair, hold on a second. We're also using our sensibility. To them, that is the easiest outfit to throw on and not have to sweat or do anything. So you have to, from a person, okay, as a Star Trek fan, the same thing we always have to deal with: real life versus Trek life. Because in Trek life, it's that perfect utopian society where people have evolved and they don't think that way and the blah, blah, whatever, you know what I mean? So I can sit here and go, well, in that setting, why wouldn't they decide to, because they don't care. So to them, it's like, that's whatever. I'm just going to wear the nearest thing. Not everything has to be flowing robes that are monk-like. Sometimes it's just whatever the utilitarian outfit is. Now, then you take that hat off and go,
utilitarian?
But in real life, if it's just a leotard bodysuit, at the end of the day, it's like, the same thing with the what are they called? The spank, not the Spanx, the
corsets,
that whole skirt, single outfit that they tried in the first season of TNG. I forget what they're called. The guys wore them sometimes too.
The skort.
Thank you.
The scant.
Yeah, that's the word I was trying to remember. But yeah, but then you come back and absolutely, to Eve's point, it's some male producer or a production designer who's coming up with these thoughts and ideas. Does it jibe with the future? Maybe. Does it happen to financially work into the profitability of the show? Blah blah blah. Absolutely. So, but I'm with you.
I will say, as somebody who has cosplayed in cat suits and high heels, like not as 7 or anything, but in stuff like that, because all those ladies wore high heels and stuff. Sure. I can tell you, those are not the easiest things to throw on, and those things they're miserable to wear. They're sweaty, they're itchy, they're uncomfortable. You can't move very freely. You would think you could, but you can't. And if you eat, then you walk around looking like you're pregnant. So never mind the whole.
I've never thought of that before. That's awesome. You're right.
Like, never mind running in high heels. Like, I have high heels from 2 inches to excuse the word, stripper heels. But yeah, I can tell you that is in no way a convenient or utilitarian outfit. The flight suits they wore on Enterprise were way more utilitarian and easier to throw on. I just wanted to say that because I'm like, looking at the group, I'm guessing most of you have never put on a cat suit and heels and tried to walk around. So
you don't know me.
I might have done it once or twice.
You don't know me.
I figured Del, but I didn't think any of the guys.
I used to do Rocky Horror. I've done everything in heels. Everything.
Okay, so you know what I mean.
Well, then let's do the time warp again.
Exactly. With a cat suit, though.
I remember doing the time
practice to walk and stuff like that. Like, it takes I can run in high heels if I need to, but it takes practice.
Good luck.
You run the risk of snapping your ankle.
Yep.
Yeah.
I used to have to run in heels in Rocky all the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
But before we move completely on, I wanted to point out the shot where I actually felt Ryan's presence in the show, and it's when she's walking into Shaw's office, and you get this camera that comes up from the floor, and you see her reflection on the floor, and then you see the full image of her and the reflection on the floor as she's walking in, and it just projects so much confidence in that one little shot. I was taken aback by how good that one little shot was, and then her whole conversation was great.
Mm-hmm.
All right, yeah, we have well and truly explored some topics about catsuits and uniforms and Annika Hansen. Before we move completely,
catsuit talk, honestly.
Are you blushing?
We'll do a whole show about it. I mean, God, we just went 10 minutes.
One last
Before we
thought, not about
completely
catsuits.
move-
One last thought, though.
That can't be an
okay, everybody with your one last thought. Go ahead.
Not about catsuits. Not about catsuits. It's about the idea that when Jerry Ryan started really just being that character, you said I could easily see when she walked on in that scene that Rob's talking about. When she walks in, I actually thought to myself, God, she walks in with the confidence that Riker used to have, just going into the captain's ready room. She feels comfortably there.
Yeah.
You sit here and you go, she is comfortable in her skin and in her position, in her rank. The only thing she's not comfortable with is butting heads with him. Because even when she's not butting heads with him, what is she doing? Oh, you've been taken out. You've been relieved of duty, but she's sitting here leading everybody in all the getting prep and moving things and doing stuff because that's who she is. She is that person inside. And I think that's the big difference. She walks around with a very commanding presence. Well deserved. Deserved.
All right, before we completely move off the Titan here, what do you think Shaw's previous mental breakdown had to do with? I know my first thought, and then I got thinking about it and realized I was wrong. My first thought is, oh, he was probably an ensign at the Battle of Wolf 359, and he's got the same kind of things against Picard and Borg that Sisko did.
Right.
But when you start thinking about where you actually are in the timeline, we're 45 years on from the Battle of Wolf 359. I don't think Shaw is that old.
Dominion War.
Could be.
Sure could. I was just trying to look for a way for it to tie into the Borg because he's clearly
so
got some
anti-Borg.
animosity towards the Borg, more than your normal Starfleet captain.
I bet Shaw is like Ed Mercer on the Orville, he has some weird relationship issues or something, and he just kind of tense because he's probably been doing weird relationship issues along with high profile space missions as well. That's my slight guess.
The whole idea of a one woman can bring down an empire.
Okay, maybe that says more about me than I would have liked it to.
Because because that's what it's kind of. I mean, it is true. One woman can bring down an empire. Look at what happened to Attila the Hun. But, I was thinking Dominion War, or there was that Borg cube in the earlier season of Picard. Maybe there was another battle with the Borg.
Maybe.
Can I ask you guys a question? Because some of you are more technically minded than I am. Are all tractor beams green?
There's been blue ones.
No, I was going to say most of them are blue, I thought.
Because when the Shrike put the tractor beam on the Titan, it was green, and it was Borg green.
Yeah, I saw that.
But Romulan used green ones too.
Oh.
And I thought to myself, that would, even if it's
Borg
not
tech.
a Borg thing, it still could have
That's
triggered
what they're trying to elicit it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Romulans.
That's a good catch. I hadn't thought about
Romulans
that.
use green too, so I was thinking
Do they?
Romulan. Yeah,
I
Romulan.
was also thinking Romulan, but there was something about the tractor beam being that color green that I went
You're
Yeah,
not wrong.
Romulan and Borg both use green. The Enterprise had blue.
okay.
Remember, they did telegraph there's something else in the cargo bay that was unidentifiable.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there could be that they haven't revisited yet. So that could be something secret like that where you're like, and here's a Borg thing. And you're like, no.
So speaking of the tractor beam, how freaking cool was it that like short warp in Picard maneuver, break the tractor beam with the Titan? That was like maybe the high point of the episode for me.
Mrs. Know-It-All goes, oh, and like freaked, like, oh my God. It's like it shocked her that that ship showed up.
Mm-hmm.
That was awesome.
I love that they're just sitting there when the tractor beam is moving and they haven't like made the connection yet that it's going to be thrown straight into their ship, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh wait a minute, evasive maneuver.
That was baffling.
Right?
Can we talk about how the fact that she yeeted a ship at him?
Yes.
That was going to be my next thing. That like, oh my God, we've never seen this before in Trek. This is pretty cool.
Right before they asked in the show, Mrs. Know-It-All goes, what did she just do? And I went, I think she just threw a ship at them. And then he goes, she threw a ship at us. I was like, oh my God, that's awesome.
Right?
Why are you guys sitting on your thumbs? Like, shouldn't you be calling for shields at the minimum? Like,
anything.
You know, why are you just doing that? Because as soon as they grab the other ship, the ship with the tractor beam, I'm like, okay, they don't want the ship because there's no point. Oh no, they're going to do something with that. Like I figured they were going to ram it into them or something. I'm like, why aren't you calling for shields? Like, come on, you guys. Are you like, you know, did you forget how to like Starfleet or something? But I have to admit, it's a baller move to throw a ship at a ship. Like that's a baller move.
What did they just? I think they threw a ship at us.
When I saw it, all I could think of was that Family Guy Star Wars parody when they do the Han Solo bit, and he's like, don't worry, I got some maneuvers. And then you see the two guys in the Death Cruiser being like, whoa, he moved slightly to the left. That guy's got some maneuvers.
Is it like something they picked up from those Drukmani scavengers in lower decks who were throwing ship parts at the studios?
Are you gonna be okay, Robbie?
Oh,
I have to say,
be proud of yourself. You killed Robbie.
Background this week when he has his head in a certain spot, it looks like he has cat ears.
That's awesome.
So we're moving on here in time. I really want to. I was going to jump to Vadic next because we have about 1,000 questions, but let's just get something out of the way that I'm not a big fan of. Which is like half the freaking episode, and Picard and his kid now. And then there's this like little bit of deception where it's like, oh well, he might not be your kid. You know, we see it, but he's got like 4 aliases.
I just want to know if being French but speaking with an English accent is hereditary.
Apparently.
Clearly.
I said that too. I'm like, where the heck did the accent come from? Like,
did she raise her kid specifically in an English environment?
Yeah.
I mean, at least with him, there's kind of more plausibility than with Jean-Luc because I get the sense that he grew up on the ship and Bev probably fed him nothing but English Shakespearean plays.
Downton Abbey episodes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Bridgerton.
I was thinking
Bridgerton. I was promised to know it all, considering that actor was on Downton Abbey.
That's right.
I'll be honest. The whole you're the father.
You are the father.
Oh God.
I was just like, come on, like no. That to me is like
Trek.
That did feel like just boilerplate stuff. Go ahead, Dale, please.
I wanted to point out 2 quotes that I absolutely loved from the opening sequence. As a disabled person, the idea of immunodeficiency against bureaucracy, I was on the floor laughing for like 10 minutes. Just the idea of, because they didn't know what was wrong with me for a very long time. They just knew that I was disabled. And so the idea of being immunodeficient against bureaucracy just got me the right way. And the other one is history remembers you with one less pip.
Yes.
Yeah.
I will agree with you on the immuno thing. I couldn't remember how it was worded. But I'll agree with you on that because it took me a few years to get my autoimmune diagnosed. So, and mine's one of the ones that's hidden, so you don't know I have an autoimmune unless I tell you. So for me, when I heard that, that just made me laugh too. And I sent it to a friend of mine who's disabled, and she was laughing. So I actually thought that was a brilliant line.
I also wanted to bring up this conspiracy theory, and I will admit that I heard it from somewhere else first, but I'm thinking about it a lot now. The name of Crusher's ship is the Mariposa, which is Spanish for butterfly. It is the same name as the clinic of the doctor who Rios ended up with. Her clinic was also called Mariposa. And we're wondering,
the Helios, but
they
mentioned something about her being part of a group or something called the Mariposa. So you're not far off.
Okay, I just wrote down Mariposa, name of clinic from season 2.
Yeah.
So
you might not be wrong.
Yeah, I heard that connection somewhere else, but I think it's true.
What was the clinic lady doing? She was helping people. So you're. I think Dale, you're right. I think you're actually hot on something there.
Didn't Guinan at the end of season 2 say that Rios's group that he went and did stuff with in the 21st century was called the Mariposa also?
Mm-hmm. I think so, yeah.
Yes.
But I just caught that word and I wrote it down immediately.
That's awesome.
Because I was like, that sounds familiar. And then my last little comment about the opening scene, when Jack jumps the incoming, it's so fake. It's so fake. Like he's obviously 20 feet from that fireball when he jumps off the stairwell.
I was looking at that too, man, that's some After Effects.
Yeah, exactly.
That was boss acting, where you can tell they're totally faking being thrown around.
Yep.
It just felt like old school Star Trek to me, so that's why I wrote it down. But those were the 3 things from the opening scene where I was just like, that's really
as a whole, what I'm really liking about this season is the action. Because as a whole, the story isn't doing it for me.
Sorry, to interrupt you, Dust. I just wanted to mention about Riker throwing that bomb. That was such a thing. It's such a small thing too for him to do, but it felt so confident and powerful in the moment. I really dug it.
Felt like Riker.
Right on.
Yeah, totally.
Love it.
Still on the topic of Picard, we had the question, why is Picard always cast as an absent father? And I'll just say that Picard is generally absent from family, period. I mean, that's kind of his thing.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Yeah, I immediately jumped to Bloodlines, which is an episode in TNG in the 7th season, where this man named Jason Vigo had his genes manipulated so that he tested positive as Picard's son, but he actually wasn't. It was all a plan of one of the Ferengi weirdos.
Star Trek in general does like to have absent parents, absent fathers. I'm going to exclude Naomi Wildman from that because it wasn't their fault that they were sent all across the galaxy. And of course we have Sisko, who's the opposite, who actually, raises his kid. But in general, Star Trek has a lot of absent parents, and parents who really aren't very good parents.
You're not wrong. Parents are probably the worst.
Yeah.
I've also had a lot of fun with the conspiracy theory that Jack is not Picard's son. I have a whole bunch of ideas as to who it could be.
My favorite theory from the internet was that it was the ghost baby from when she was banging the ghost.
Here's the thing. I had stopped watching The Ready Room. I don't think I've watched it in quite a while.
Never have.
Honestly, probably about a year.
Never have either.
Wow. I watch it randomly, but after last week's episode, they had a Ready Room, and it was pretty definitive. Will Wheaton's talking about, and I have a brother.
Yeah.
And it was definitive. It wasn't it might be like they did to us this week. They told us last week, basically, this is Picard's son, period. I've got or at least that he has a brother.
So one of my theories comes from this scene. Riker reflexively calls Jack kid. Even before that's established. Wouldn't it be crazy if Bev cheated on Jean-Luc with Riker just once?
Especially
I hate you so much.
I would love that drama, honestly.
I'm still kind of going with the
fan shipping joke I like.
You crazy.
I'm still holding out hope for the idea that this isn't a natural born child and maybe Bev did some genetic stuff here. And that
I
would
was
honestly
kind of
be cooler
thinking
than it
that from
just
the
being
first episode
Picard's
when we
kid.
saw they had a
I
like a
was
box
thinking
full
this
of
was
back
like a-
crusher stuff.
Yeah, I was thinking this was like a petri
Okay.
dish and turkey baster job.
I also think it should be taken into consideration that Jack makes it very clear that Bev is this new revolutionary
That's
sort of and whatever. And I'm thinking, if she really is that different, would it be hard for her to lie about the parentage of her son? Especially since she doesn't say anything.
Okay.
She just
She would have broken off contact because he's genetically manipulated.
Mm.
That's quite possible.
that's why I
I
still
have
think
an
it was a turkey
ultimatum.
baster.
Oh, do you?
What's your
I have an
ultimatum?
ultimatum for. Sorry. Okay. Am I still on a delay? So sorry if I am.
A little bit. It's fine. Just go.
Yeah.
Okay. I have an ultimatum for the Picard team coming up in the future. If we are really going to show how this child is conceived, we either have to do the petri dish idea that Eve did, or a full-on septuagenarian sex scene. It has to be one or the other, guys.
Oh,
You have to go all in when you do this stuff, guys.
we do.
You have to
Another
go all in, no matter what the cost.
I mean, clone was the other theory that I saw on the internet because Picard's been cloned before.
Yeah. Okay.
This may be reading too far into things, but Jack also claims full frontal in Picard's face that he's never had a father. Now, granted, that could be a reference to an absentee father, but I'm wondering if he has no father at all.
Like Star Wars, he just
Yes.
happened. Hey, maybe it's Immaculate Conception and Space Jesus did it.
I don't know. Cisco wasn't involved as far as I know.
Hey,
Jack looks a little bit light to the complexion there for that one. I'm just saying.
I would
I'm
like
Space Jesus now. Thanks for that.
All right. We are going to move on past Picard and his son and all things attached. So we've got about 100 questions that revolve around Vatic and her ship. Amanda Plummer is just
Chewing the
she
scenery.
is amazing.
She is unreal.
But before we even get to a question, I just want to say I don't think, and you guys can chime in without a question here. I don't actually like this character. I like the way Amanda Plummer is playing the character, but it's a very one-dimensional character that's just missing the mustache to
I
twirl.
was gonna say if she could grow a mustache, she would.
And being the daughter of Chris Plummer,
She
she
probably
could rock
can.
a mustache.
Mustache.
The
Absolutely.
smoking too was a little weird because, like,
Right?
because we don't see cigarette and cigar smoking in the future.
No.
The closest,
No.
we have-
Rios,
We
but
saw Rios, but
but I mean,
that was. I thought it was a pen of some kind that she was. So it was like a vape, like it was a glorified.
vaping. Yeah.
Right. Versus this, she full on.
She's
Vatican had
lighting
a full
it
on
up.
cigar.
Yes.
Like it was a.
I don't know if it
giant
was a
one.
cigar. There's this habit in the South of smoking chicory, and chicory looks more like a stick than it does like a cigarette.
Yeah.
There's also something you can smoke in India that's called a bindi, or a beedi, and they're also very stick-like in structure. So I also was jarred at the image of smoking, but if you look at the history of why chicory and beedies exist, I could like wedge it in there and push really hard and be like, maybe. But yeah, I was also very shocked at the smoking thing. That's why immediately I was like, she's not smoking tobacco. What is she smoking?
yeah, because
people
we don't
Go
really
ahead,
see
Eve.
tobacco in the future. I mean,
Yeah.
we see beetle snuff, but the Ferengis snort it like cocaine. They don't
Right.
smoke it.
People throw around the idea that, Gene Roddenberry would roll over in his grave for this. One of his hard and fast rules was no smoking on the bridge. There was a
Yeah.
couple of acts of smoking in TOS, but never, ever on the bridge of a ship. Now, I don't know that it was said as a Starfleet ship or whatever. But yeah, we're smoking on the bridge now.
I half expected to see her pick up a cat and start stroking it like the villains do in the movies.
Like a Vulcan cat, like those really kind of like big, scary
cat.
ones.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I half expected that along with the mustache, like just stroking the cat. Or doing the Dr. Evil thing or something.
I would really like to say if
1
she
million
is
space
this
bucks?
committed for a Star Trek role, I want to see her in a Christopher Guest movie and see what she does with that.
You were going to say Chris Plummer, weren't you?
I was. They got similar names.
Funny thing is, Christopher Plummer's Star Trek role isn't the one he's known for. That's what makes me laugh.
Yeah.
Like Star Trek fans, he is, but the one he's known for is that god awful Sound of Music, which he himself hated.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen it, so I don't know, because I know him from like 1,000
Sure,
things
he's
that I
lucky.
love. He's in maybe at least 5 things in my top 100 favorite movies. Easily.
If you're in Canada and you say Christopher Plummer, everybody goes straight to The Sound of Music, or as he called it, The Sound of Mucus, because he hated it.
I don't do musicals.
Well, it's only loosely based on the truth. It's so bad the actual family hated it. And he himself hated it, but it was the role that he's known for up here. More than Star Trek or anything, he's known for that.
So I have a question for you guys.
Go ahead.
Do you think Vedic is talking to Shaw when she's talking, or is she talking directly to Picard?
She's talking to Picard. She doesn't care about Shaw.
I have no idea what's going on there. I was just about to ask the question, how does Vadic know the profile of these Starfleet officers? There is something weird with this woman. I don't know if she's part Borg or what, but you don't just recall that quickly about random Starfleet personnel.
He actually reminded me of someone. It was in Sherlock. That one guy that he went up against, Massengill, the guy who had information on everyone and it was just blackmailing the hell out of everybody. And they were trying to find like his, trove of information that he had, but he keeps it all in his head like Sherlock does. So I kind of think she's something like that. I mean, obviously she's connected and she's able to figure stuff out, but then, it's all up there.
Maybe augmented somehow.
Oh, maybe.
There's something going on there.
I wonder who's feeding her the information, because like her knowledge is extremely up to date too. Like she said, when she says Picard in the synthetic flesh. So she's like up to date. Like, does she have a spy camera on these guys, or is like the Tal Shiar feeding her information? What's going on here? Because I'm thinking
they were being followed, so clearly there's other people in on the plot.
Right.
I think everybody knows how old Picard is now.
And maybe like even that dude that we were talking about last week, that random crew member that Riker dresses down, that gives him that weird look. Yeah. And then we saw him again as the transporter operator this week. Maybe somebody's feeding her information. She was ready with this info because she knew she was going to need it. Now that would make more sense. Go ahead, Del.
I was going to say, I noticed that Dustin's favorite shifty officer was the transporter chief in that scene. And I still wonder what was happening between him and Jack before Seven showed up. Because Jack is pointing a phaser at Mr. Shifty, Officer Shifty. And yes. And then Seven comes in and sees that. But we have no idea what discussion happened before then. Is he helping him escape? Is he keeping him there? We don't really know. And so I think we should still keep our eyes on Officer Shifty.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way he's not coming, especially where, good catch, I didn't notice him in the transporter room.
He's got to be
definitely coming back.
I'm going to call it. He's Section 31. He is Section 31. But because they keep mentioning Section 31 is the only organization that it feels present, even though we've not seen them at all in this series. So shows
that.
And when they show up, they don't show up like Q does, like a bloody fleet admiral. They tend to put themselves in like unnoticeable positions where you wouldn't really pay attention to them.
Mm-hmm.
They don't look at, we had Lieutenant Reed. He's not that really high ranking, and something crashed.
Right?
Oh, I had a crash in my background. Sorry.
Okay, I thought my dog was doing something.
Oh no, my fault.
But yeah, they always tend to insert themselves in lower positions so you don't notice them. So that could I kind of have to agree. Officer Shifty, now that he's going to be known as Officer Shifty, is probably Section 31, and if he is, he'd have all the information.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Especially psychological profile, like how did that...
Officer Shifty.
That sounds like a Reno 911 character.
It does.
Absolutely.
It sure does. What does
Officer
Vadic's
Shifty?
ship being called the Shrike, a type of Earth creature, say about her?
I think she's human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
I
she's
think
working for someone else, but I wrote down, is she human? But the more I think about it, there's nothing obvious about her that makes her alien, except for recall, if that's even a thing. And so I wouldn't be surprised if she knew what a Shrike was and chose it on purpose rather than just inheriting a ship named the Shrike or whatever. I think she named it.
He could be a hybrid too. Because some hybrids do appear human, even when
That's
they're
true.
not.
I also thought it was interesting that the shuttle that Picard and Riker were on, when it explodes, they made a very specific point of showing that the name of the shuttle pod was, oh God.
They did?
Savick.
That's the word I was looking for.
Vatic.
And Savick and Vatic sound very similar. And so I don't know if that was a hint or just a coincidence, but it was something I wrote down.
One thing I will say about Vatic too, just the way the character is almost maniacal.
Mm-hmm.
Like most of the villains Picard's ever come up against tend to be cold and calculating. Like Borg and
Well, I think she is. She's got so much torpedo in her tube. She's got the biggest stick and she knows it.
Yep. And she's a swinging.
I'm sorry, my mind went 12 years old there when you said
That's okay.
And then he goes, she's a swinging.
Yeah, I think Del picked up on it too. Yeah.
That's okay. We need more villains in Star Trek who aren't afraid to swing, in my opinion, if you get say it.
You're not wrong, sir.
My whole thing is, but I'm with you though. It's like I feel like Vadic's one of those characters that everyone wants to tell us Vatic is scary, but Vatic doesn't come across as scary.
Vatic comes across like Mr. Burns scary, in that she almost like she's comedic, like to a degree in her absurdity, with her actions. I wonder who her Smithers is. I can't wait till that guy shows up.
Totally.
You guys have no idea where my mind has been for the last minute. We were talking about T'Pol and Seven and jumpsuits and swinging and Vatic, and now my brain is
You were
somewhere
going to a
completely
Naked
different.
Time holodeck episode.
This is not a
Right.
fan fiction show.
Look, you calm down, Fortis, okay? We are on the bridge.
Yes.
My mind went the same place, Del. I totally get you.
Back to Picard.
Oh, yeah, that thing.
Right.
Could Picard... No, that's just a show. Could Picard still be suffering from some age-related mental decline, even though he's in a new synthetic body? Since he's forgotten random things, like removing the transport inhibitors in this one, he didn't remember that DS4 didn't exist in the last one, or the warp, you don't need to notify engineering anymore.
And he had
It's
a-
like,
Like,
no,
that's
but those are, hold on.
rest.
Everything, but those things aren't like not notifying engineering. That's a protocol
Starfleet
thing that
thing,
would
yeah.
change while he's not been in command or been serving. So unless he didn't necessarily know, it probably was in a communique he didn't read, and then that rule changed. And then the other part about whether or not he's what was the first part of that? There was two parts.
The
that you were-
transport inhibitors.
That's right.
That was the only one from this episode.
Say it again.
The bit with
he
the
forgot to
transport inhibitors?
remove the transport inhibitors.
Right.
And it
So
just
that's
like it created an extra minute for nothing. Basically, it was
It
extra.
could have been
It's not
fatal,
like any of
though.
us running around crazy would be like, "Oh my god, a ship just showed up! They're here to rescue us." Who I didn't know. My thought is gonna be like, "Whoa, the Titan!" Not quick. Turn off the inhibitors.
Yeah, and when the strike showed up, he was like immediately running around setting those things up. So I think he knew he was at least on the ball at that point.
That's the
Right.
thing. Like, 1 minute he's on the ball, and the next minute he seems like confused.
That just sounds like an 80-year-old man.
Well,
Or
he
then-
said,
But that's just it. He's synthetic though, so
so yeah.
No, but
that's
they
why-
said he would still. They
he'd still
purposely-
die. But
Yeah, but you grow old and stuff wears out.
really, you have this brand new body, and like I get it. It's in the form of a 90-something-year-old man.
Right.
But you're
Right.
telling me that this brand new brain is as bad as a 90-year-old brain? Ah, that's
No,
weird.
he's supposed to age normally.
because I don't know, he seemed, like I say, he seems confused in a lot of parts, and other parts all of a sudden he's
Knows
sharp
right
with
what's
his
going
cat.
on.
And I mean, Noah, I was talking to a friend of mine while I was watching it, who's down in the States, and he basically put it, no offense to anybody, this is not meant to be political, he said he's getting Joe Biden vibes off of Picard. 1 minute he's there and he's present, the next minute he's shaking
Okay.
hands with
Yep.
the air.
Not wrong.
So that's why I was thinking like age-related mental decline, because I know people have suspected that Biden has, the start of some kind of mental decline.
This is
That would actually make sense, though. He's an 80-year-old man in an 80-year-old body.
Yeah, and he did have that ear-rheumatic syndrome. I mean, sure, maybe he doesn't have it now, but maybe there's still an after effect.
Anything's possible.
I have a weird
I think we're
thought
overthinking it.
about Picard and where his mind is at. And
What?
Robbie's going to laugh when he hears what I wrote down. Because it was after we were talking.
Okay.
I'm wondering
Is this a
if the
Mr. Magoo
reason...
reference coming up?
This is a Scientology reference coming up.
Okay.
I really don't understand fully why Picard turns around and engages the Shrike. Like, I get it, but I don't. And I'm wondering if this is supposed to be illustrative of now he has a more reactive mind since all of the occurrences in season 2. That he's now more emotional. He's more fueled, or at least open to be fueled by his emotions and feelings and thoughts, rather than by protocol and by rules and by Starfleet. And so that I think it might be showing the effects of season 2, even though
I'm trying to understand. Can you give me the reference point again? Where you said because of what? Because of how he reacted to when you said when he turned on them again?
when he so in season 2, one of the major plot points was about Picard accessing his emotions.
Yeah, no, I'm aware. I'm talking about where you referenced to this season.
Oh, when he turns
When did
around and engages the Shrike, when he does the whole, Admiral rules, I'm going in.
He engages them for two reasons. The first, his time has run out. The second is it's his son, and that has now all become abundantly clear.
But I'm wondering if the son part isn't more exaggerated because now he can access his emotions after dealing with his mother's suicide.
I mean,
I don't know.
I think he's always been able to access his emotions. I don't sit here and
You
no
sure?
offense.
I
Last
don't
season
think
meant
so.
nothing to me. By that I mean last season didn't change or alter anything having to do with how Picard has always been. Picard's been merciful when he need to be merciful. He's been exacting when he need to be exacting. He's never been like to me the character that they tried to sell us last season didn't necessarily jibe and fit 100%. I'm willing to go with them. I enjoy those events, but at the same time, I feel like there's not like I don't necessarily know that that's affecting a whole lot of what's going on right this second. That doesn't mean you're wrong. I just mean because he's very much more. He's definitely something's going on with him,
right?
And my whole thing is like it's not like it's the first time he's had a kid, and by that I mean if I'm talking fake lives or real life.
Yeah,
it's like he's experienced loss on some level and experienced. I mean, the idea that I'd be more pissed off at the idea that she might have been hiding him for all these years for some reason.
Yeah,
that's the reasons why I lean when you guys talk about the possibility that she did something untoward. I sit here and go, man, I hope we're not getting into like genetic stuff and cloning things and weird nonsense because I feel like that's a harder sell to explain that she would have quote unquote violated him like that than then it's not. You know what I mean? I'm like, let's see what's up. So yeah, I don't know.
Really, the only other emotional time we have with Picard is in First Contact when he loses his temper and he destroys his ships. When he's fighting with Lily and she's like, blow up the damn ship. That's really the only time we get a true like emotional outburst from him where he's acting purely on emotion. I mean, he's pretty glued together most of the time. I mean, when he starts season 1, he has a stick up his butt, essentially. Like he's still, and then over time he gets a little more relaxed. But the only real time he's ever acted on emotion, unlike now, like Del was saying, was in First Contact. Otherwise, he doesn't act on emotion. And this time he's more emotional.
Here's the thing, though. The Picard we knew in TNG, it wouldn't have mattered if it was somebody he knew. It wouldn't have mattered if it was his son. He just would have taken care of the situation and be damned to the crew. We're going to do what's right.
That's true. That's very true.
So it's a weird depiction, especially now that he's an admiral and he's like taking over this ship, even though he doesn't have real authority. Which is weird that Shaw even kind of lets him do it. He lets him roll after all this stuff that Shaw has thrown out and put them in bunks and demeaned him and Riker. Like, why did he even let Picard do this? He's not
I have a theory.
Admiral.
I have a theory.
He lost control. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Del.
Before this happens, Picard and Shaw have a conversation about what to do with Jack. And it's the first time Shaw is not a bag of dicks.
That's our favorite word on the show.
More like a pocket only. Just a pocket.
I wrote down Captain Bag of Dicks in my notes. But it's the first time he actually shows any empathy whatsoever. And so I'm thinking that maybe leads to why he acquiesces is now he understands. Maybe.
Maybe.
Or he could just be a bag of dicks.
I definitely think he's nuanced. I can't wait to find out where his pain comes from. Go ahead, Robbie.
I think Shaw has gotten to a point. Okay. Am I still on delay? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, but just say it.
Yeah. I think Shaw has gotten to the point to where he realizes that in the situation they're in, his methodical nature is not going to get them out of it, that they need a person who can improvise, as he talks about in the first episode.
Yeah.
Like when I think about Shaw and like all his characters, everything he does is about like having perfect timing and doing things by the book. And in a situation like this, it's impossible to get out of it, like what you're true if you're doing everything by the book.
Yeah, we're starting to lose you. You're definitely breaking up now, Robbie.
Yeah.
But I think we're just about wrapping up
okay.
here. It's all right. We had a few more questions, but we're running long. And does anybody have anything they really want to get into?
I'm looking through my notes. Give me like half a second.
I was just letting the dog back in. So
I didn't take notes. So. It's a little bit unprepared. I didn't think I was going to be here.
This is the shortest amount of notes that I have taken in a really long time on an episode of Star Trek, and that includes
I did write down that Shaw calls Riker and Picard boys.
Yeah.
And I thought that was an interesting reference. And let's see, Rangers. Oh, they mentioned Binar 3. It's a fucking like fast reference, but they do mention Binar 3, and I'm wondering if that's tied to Moriarty since the Binar created Minuet.
I like the name Binar 3 because it just it sounds like a oxymoron almost.
It does.
Binar 3. Shouldn't it be Binar 11?
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. I can see that.
If we're throwing out random callbacks in
Binar 10?
In
10
the
is
Romulans,
2.
in the Romulans write-up on that Raffi brings up, he was imprisoned at one point on a planet that in the TAS episode, The Survivors, somebody sets the Enterprise on course for that planet. Random stupid trivia.
No, right
Did
on.
you have some more?
Okay.
The only other comment I had, I did watch the closing credits more closely this time. I also did hear that they are hints about the future. So I tried to stay very not too theorizing about it. I did notice this time, yes, there is a semicolon closed parentheses on the holodeck thing. So there is a sad winky face. And I'm not sure if it's the closing of a statement or if it really is meant to be a sad winky face. I also noticed something called a war report. And we were talking earlier about either Wolf 359 or the Dominion War. There is a war report in the closing credits that I noticed this time. And so I was like, I wonder if we're going to get into a war or if it's related to a war or what. But it was an interesting thing for me to pick up on.
My only last thought was we've got Sydney LaForge. Is her loyalty going to be tested? Because, I mean, you could see it on her face. She didn't know who to listen to when Shaw told her belay that order and Seven was pushing for them to do something, because she would have grown up hearing all about the legends and stuff. And I mean, Shaw's pretty dismissive of her when she says, you know, my father taught me that every law of physics can be, you know, defeated by another law of physics.
Including holographic ones.
Yeah. So, and he's a little dismissive of her. So I'm kind of wondering again, like, is her loyalty going to be tested? Because, you know, is she going to be put in a situation where she has to choose between her ship and her father? Because that would be very Star Trek.
Or her sister, because we know we're going to see LeVar Burton's actual daughter, Micah, come on as another daughter of LaForge. So
and
that's going to be interesting.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so that isn't the actual daughter. Okay.
No,
that is.
He has two daughters, but his actual one is coming later this season.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing is, now I lost my train of thought. My brain just went out the window. And it was about
a few more questions. Oh, go ahead.
It was about Sydney, but I can't put it. I forgot.
I also wrote down a quote from Bloodlines, the other episode where he had a son that he didn't know he had, but then it wasn't his son. And Beverly says to him about parenting advice. She looks at him and says, are you doing the best thing for him or the easiest thing for you?
That's right.
And I thought that related to this episode quite strongly.
That makes a lot of sense.
I have to wonder if Beverly didn't make if Beverly isn't the reason Jack is kind of gone rogue, like if she really wasn't the one who did it and he's just lying or whatever. I have to really wonder if he's like her do-over child. She's like really failed in the parenting department here.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know about that.
I don't know.
As far as failed
my
parents
kid,
in Trek go, she's
the-
actually one of the better ones.
Yeah, she's not Worf.
Yeah.
she's not
Worf. She's not Picard.
But she's not
Annika's parents.
No, but she's not a very good mom.
I'm not saying she's a great mom, but as far as parents go in Trek, she's not that bad.
Annika's parents make the argument that, you know, not everyone should be allowed to have children.
Yes.
If you want to go and pursue the deadliest race in the galaxy, go for it. Don't take your kids along with you.
Agreed.
Yep.
So.
Oh my God. Okay. Let me tell you, I'm so glad that this Picard son stuff isn't with like a cute little boy. Oh, he's so innocent. I'm so glad I don't have to see that crap in this show. Let me tell you.
Tell us how you really feel, though.
Oh, you know how I really feel.
Right on, man.
Well, now I want you to all tell me how you really, really feel about this episode out of 10. I'm going to give it about a 6. It's got some strong points. I really like the stuff with Sneed and Raffi. Worf was a bit of an afterthought. Basically everything with Picard and on the Titan, though, can just go away for me.
So
That's
it's
my
funny
thought.
because I actually like those things only because I like to see any life that's happening in that time frame. That's one of the reasons why I thought season 2 was such a cop-out, because it's like, here we are, you've been missing this stuff, but now we're gonna go to the past, we're gonna time travel. And I'm like, no, just keep me here. So same thing, seeing them on the ship felt the most like what I've been wanting to see. That's why I'm so excited to kind of continue seeing that ramp up. You know, seeing when Geordi shows up and everything else, and other people show all this other stuff and whatnot. My rank for this stuff, I would say it's a solid 8. It's not as high as the first episode was, and it's but I definitely think it's not abysmal. So I'm still here for the show all day. So let's go. I can't wait to see who's next.
I would give the show a 7.5. It was better for me than the premiere, but I'm also a conspiracy nut. I really love when they drop little hints. I can go to the weirdest places with them. And so that's fun for me, is to try to take like a conspiracy and turn it into something completely different. So that's fun for me with the Jack plot line. And I'm all about Frankie, so Sneed is fine with me, even though he's dead. I'm hoping he comes back in some way. Sneed, revenge for Sneed.
Climb that Black Mountain, buddy.
Yes. But yeah, I would give it like a 7.5.
I mean, some of it, I was saying, was a little predictable, you know, like Worf showing up, being exactly who we thought he was. And literally everybody was saying Jack was probably Picard's son. So even though it didn't seem entirely like that was confirmed, it was just that Picard said it after looking at Beverly, and it's just like this silent understanding between them. Mm-hmm. One thing that really got me was that, we're ending this by running off to hide in a nebula. Like, oh, okay, so yeah, I've seen Wrath of Khan. I remember Memento Mori. I see where this is going. Altogether, it'd probably be the same as last episode. I'll give it a 7.
I'm gonna say about a 6.5. I loved Sneed. To me, Sneed was the best new character in this episode. It was nice to see a Ferengi who wasn't, who was cruel and, willing to do anything for his profits, like literally anything. And I liked some of the parts, but I liked how Seven was and everything, but the rest of it was kind of bland. I mean, on one hand, I do I like how Vadic is being played, but I don't like Vadic, same as Dustin. It's, I'm hoping that gets better. The other thing, and this is something, because Del keeps saying conspiracy. This was a thought I had. Those weird creatures that Vadic had, are they the conspiracy bugs?
Conspiracy?
Yeah. I have been wondering. Because that is one plot thread that they never picked up.
I hoped they never would.
They had the meat.
That sounds pretty good.
They had the meat explosion, as Dustin put it, and we know they got a signal off. But who are they? And because those creatures are somewhat insect-like, and the way they have the sound that they make when they communicate, I'm wondering if that's something connected to the conspiracy aliens. I have to really wonder, because they would have it out for Picard.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Because he was the one who uncovered the plot or whatever.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Okay.
Sorry, it was just because Del kept saying conspiracy, and I'm like, if
that's
they
a good conspiracy.
It
that
is.
is a good conspiracy.
Mm-hmm.
Robbie?
All right. Well, before I give my actual score, I want to point out that I think the show has been more than entertaining enough to earn a passing grade from me. Even though I think it's got a lot of sloppy storytelling, I think all the stuff with with Picard's son, I don't know why I said that, with Picard's son is pretty light, and it does This is the future, and they can figure out if he's the son or not with a simple blood test immediately. I don't understand why we're avoiding all these little easy things to figure out how things should function in this show. But I really like the darkness of the conspiracy stuff. I'm enjoying Shaw a lot and how terse he is with everyone, even when he doesn't have the grasp on the situation he would like. I'm I really like the villains and their little Court of Owls type thing they got going on. If anybody doesn't know what the Court of Owls is, it's a Batman thing, which is like a super high crime organization that controls Gotham in the shadows. And that,
I'm
like,
rooting for
their
bad guys this season.
Me too. But I used to root for bad guys.
Stop it.
Yeah, like their appearance really makes me think of the Court of Owls. And I hope we find out that there's like a giant shadow organization that Vatic runs. That'd be real cool. If that ties in with Raffi's story, all the better. Jerry Ryan's getting a lot of time to shine, so that factors into my score as well. Yeah, I'm thinking about 7.5.
Nice.
Okay.
So nobody thinks it's in an 8. Or Mr. Know-It-All, you gave it an 8.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, somewhere between a 6 and an 8. Pretty good, not perfect, could be better. I hope we see way more cool stuff this season. And when I say I'm rooting for the bad guys, like people like Sneed too. Like I just like there's some good bad guys we're getting this season. It's a whole lot of fun. I don't really want to see Picard die, but as we talked about last season or last episode, I don't think he's going to make it out of this season. It's only a question of whether it's Moriarty or Amanda Plummer.
Oh, right.
I don't think it's going to be Sneed.
Dude.
I don't think he's going to climb that Black Mountain this season.
All I can say is if Moriarty was angry before, he's going to be pissed now. It's like, he thought, man.
The other thing with Sneed, I don't think we'll get it like a, revenge for Sneed moment, because we already had a Ferengi episode with Diamond Bach where he was out for revenge and all his crew turned on him because there's no profit in revenge.
That's right.
It's true.
All right. Well, now that we have run this thing well and truly long, I'd like to thank all of my co-hosts for joining me today on Buffer Time and for all of you that tuned in to watch. We'll be back here next Saturday at 11 a.m. again talking episode 3 of Picard. Until then, live long and prosper, my friends.